but we're going to jump right on into it. Last year at this time in January, I did a recap of 2023. The only reason I bring this on up is to let you know that this recording is also available, and you can click on that. You can either click and take a picture of that QR code or go to bit.ly and look for EAI underscore Jan 24 WW. And by the way, that's my formula. I made very special codes. So you are going to be able to find any of these presentations by doing a bit.ly, is what's called bit.ly short link for EAI underscore whatever month, 3-letter month, and then the 24 WW. That's my code. So that'll give you 2023, but I'll start with February, because that was really where we had some new content being delivered. And in February, which is bit.ly / EAI, should say underscore Feb 24, so there's an underscore missing. I'll show you this QR code again at the end of the February recap. So I'm doing like bookends, the beginning and ending of each month. I'll show you what it is. But last February, we fell in love with Tasha Sheehan. And Tasha is a national educational consultant for the College and Career Consultants of Northern Texas. Tasha got into getting to the heart of future readiness for all students. And she has certifications as both a principal and a superintendent, and she specializes in helping administrators, educators, and learning organizations find meaningful career exploration and learning solutions for all students. So she's got 26 years worth of experience, and it was a delight. Here's my big takeaway from last February that we loved because it was February. We said getting to the heart of future readiness. And she gave us a acronym, BAIT, bait, like you're going fishing. And that was about building support structures, analyzing existing opportunities, identifying emerging markets in your community, and understanding the importance of partnerships with your community for viable career paths. That is something we've learned over the past, this is going to be our 5th year doing Webinar Wednesdays. And over these years, and you just keep going through all these people from different parts of the country sharing, well, in my community, we have a big, beautiful lake. It's a tourist area. And so there's a lot of hotels and resorts. And so we're training students to work in those resorts. Or somebody else said the biggest employer in our community is the hospital. So we were working with administrators in the hospital to find places to place our students. Or it's a school system. Sometimes your own school system is the biggest employer in your area. So finding those partnerships within your community, BAIT is the acronym to remember. And I love that. It really helps you build support structures, and it really helps you meet students where they're at and look at all of the different pieces. If you take a picture of that QR code or go to the bit.ly / EAI underscore Feb 24, you'll hear Tasha talk a little bit further about that. That was February. It was a lot of fun. And it led us right on into March. So in March, we were blessed to have Dr. Carla Wade come and join us. And she talked about strategies for success in career education and transition for students on the spectrum, of the autism spectrum. Dr. Wade is from the Emory University School of Medicine at the Emory Autism Center. And she began there. She joined them in 2022. She had begun as a special ed paraprofessional way back when, then went as a teacher and a coach and a transition coordinator, and just kept going on down the road. What she covered with us last March was really key, because so many of our students present with multiple types of issues in terms of learning. So she spoke about autism, about the major barriers for finding career choices and options for them. And then she did a deep dive into those success strategies. I think it was really clear because she broke it down into 4 key areas and said that our students on the spectrum have issues at varying degrees because they're on the spectrum with executive functioning, with social skills, daily living activities, and self-awareness. So you can take a look at the students in your class and determine which ones need more of one thing or the other. And then she actually broke those 4 areas down into the sub skills. So, for example, under executive functioning skills, she talked about task initiation, right? Kids who need to be prompted. Okay, boys and girls, here's what you're going to do right now. Johnny, that's you. You need to get up and do. And now, John, I want you next time we do this to self-initiate. I want you, when I tell you the kids it's time to get started on this part of our day, that you're going to get up without me reminding you. Like, how do we do that? And then, hey, John, you did this 3 days in a row. That's awesome. Guess what? Like, how do we reinforce it and so forth? But it's all of these things: problem solving, emotional control and self-regulation, working memory, having memory games, and so forth. So spoke about all of those kinds of things and then gave us absolute specific examples. So really a great formula, going from the 4 key areas of where students with autism have issues, and then strategies within each of those areas, and then specific things like using a checklist, using timers, reminders, self-regulation strategies. And she spoke at length about each one of these. I think it's really, makes it easier for teachers on how to plan when they have like kind of this overarching umbrella of things to be thinking about. And when you're looking at things in this kind of a big way, I think this particular recording from last March is really a must for any new teacher or paraprofessional that you have on your team, because they could sit down and in the 45 minutes have a really great primer that would help them understand. I think it's even pretty good for parents, right? Because some parents are saying, why are you teaching my son how to, memorize things when he really needs to learn how to read? Well, being able to have retention of the things that you read is part of comprehension. So, like, it helps explain things to parents who may not otherwise be aware of some of that. And I think that that's an important thing. So, yeah, I just heartily encourage you to share this. Here's the link again. If you want to take a snapshot of the QR code or go to that bit.ly link right there. Just great practical advice from Dr. Carla Wade at the Emory University Center for Autism last March. All right. Moving right along, in April, we had Nicole Lowers come on in, and she's an autistic support and life skills teacher at IU #1 in Pennsylvania. And for those of you who may not be familiar with what an IU is, in Pennsylvania, that's the term for their educational service agency. And fun fact, there are 553 educational service agencies nationwide. They all have different names. Where I live in New York, we call them BOCES, and there are 37 BOCES in New York. But in New Mexico, they are RECs, Regional Educational Centers, and there are 10 in New Mexico. There are 20 ESCs in Texas, right? So they're with different names, different amounts, different ways that they work with districts. So they're different from state to state, but they're all quasi-governmental agencies. They sit between the state ed department and your local school district, and they provide services to 2 or more districts that are in need of whatever it might happen to be. So Nicole actually runs the support services for autistic students, and specifically on life skills is what she teaches. And she was talking about a lot of things. She did a brief overview of the policies and programs and funding for transition and planning. And that's universally applicable. It applies in any state of the union. So these were some of the funding areas that she spoke about. So if you're still looking and saying, well, how come, what are we doing with WIOA funds or Vocational Rehab Act? You can go on in and learn a little bit more, so you're just informed enough so you can go back on up and find out what else might be available. And if you're applying for any of these grants and such, it might be helpful to have some of the stats that go with it. So you could see, some of these things are, you've got to put in a justification when you apply for a grant. And it's really helpful to say, that 18% of people with intellectual disabilities participate in competitive employment. And therefore, it is our school or district's imperative to be able to support those students in finding a career choice. She had some great examples from the local news. And so this video, she did play a bit of it. We've got way too much to cover today to go on into the video. So I encourage you to go back to the April recording and listen to it. But these were some entrepreneurs in the local community in Western PA, where she lives in IU1 area. And they employ disabled workers. Wow. There are so many companies that really do focus in on that. And, I know that it's either Green Giant or Stop and Shop, and there's several different names for that grocery store chain across the country. They have a great policy and a great onboarding practice for students with disabilities. McDonald's has a great practice for supporting students with disabilities. So some of these employers are really important to connect with. And then she talked about some of the obligations that we have as educators in how we can help students be ready for this, and giving them little field trips to those types of places where they could meet other employees and talk with potential bosses and so forth. So she had a lot of good little tips within that. And then these research-based practices are the buzzwords you want to include in any grants you're writing, or in any proposals you're writing, or in any letter to your local community of business leaders and so forth. So just good information that you can put into a real practical application at any time from April 2024. And then in May, we had a lot of fun with Valencia Boyd. Valencia is a dean of students at a Renaissance charter school in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, where it's not freezing cold today.
Still cold.
It's still cold, but it's not freezing cold, right? And she was talking about PBIS. How many of you folks out there use PBIS in your schools or districts now? I'd be curious to find out. Positive behavior and intervention supports are really an evidence-based practice. And she gives a full description of what PBIS is and how to target populations that would be benefit from that. And by the way, I've used PBIS not only with my special needs students, but in general ed environment, especially where we've got underperforming students who are still feeling the effects of the pandemic and are struggling with social emotional kinds of issues. PBIS helps to support and build the more positive types of interactions amongst students as well. So there are certain things that you can pull that would apply universally. So what's nice about that is that it doesn't have to be something that just happens in the X number of special ed classrooms in your school. While the rest of the school population goes on their merry way, you're doing your own thing. This approach kind of brings the whole school together, gen ed and special ed. Everybody can be reinforcing and rewarding good behavior and providing interventions as needed as you go along. So like I said before, these recordings are really great to share. So I said paraprofessionals, new teachers, parents, general ed teachers, the gym teacher, the school bus drivers, the principal of the building. I mean, PBIS is something everybody could really take into account. Equity, systems, data, practices, outcomes. Super simple to kind of integrate, because you can always incorporate just little bits. I mean, yeah, on the school bus monitor, noticing, oh, well, gee, you moved your bag off the chair to let another student sit down next to you. that was kind. And I want to reinforce that and share with everybody else, just good behavior and interaction amongst students. Doesn't matter whether they have an IEP or not, right? And she went into for teachers what they should be looking for and what to do. She had some really great examples of how to greet students at the door. So I won't even show you that because you've got to go back and watch this back in May. Because some teachers had like a sign in front of their door, and as the students lined up to come in for the morning, they could tap on the way they wanted to greet the teacher. And so you could do a high five, or you could do a little dance, or shake hands, or get a hug. So there were like different ways to incorporate some ways to greet students. Just fun. It also, as I said, spoke to school leaders because they're so busy keeping things running. They may have skipped over this. They may also just say, oh, that goes to the special ed department. And when you can kind of see that this goes with everybody, run, don't walk. bit.ly/EAI_May 24 WW. Really great to share that out. Those links, you can share this out with anybody you'd like. All right, here's another example of a great crossover between general ed and special ed. We had Chris Woods, who's a teacher, a speaker, an author, a podcaster. He's a STEM nerd, and he uses the word nerd. He loves it. He had over 150 slides for us last August to kick off the new school year. I looked at it, I said, Chris, we only have like 45 minutes. He goes, don't worry, I'm going to go through 150 slides. I said, okay. And he did. So once again, there's a QR code and a bit.ly, same model, EAI_August 24 WW. Here's what he covered. What is STEM? Science, technology, engineering, and math. What should it look like at schools? Why do we need STEM? How do we do STEM, right? So a good overview. And if for nothing else, this webinar was inspirational. If you're having a tough day or week or month, because it's hard being a teacher, watch this webinar. Like, this is just your feel good thing, because he really underscores it's not just a big job, it's the most important job. And so it's a big uplift for faculty meeting just to kind of get that on out there. He talked about our materials, project discovery, job ready, life ready, and how that can really help prepare students, because we take on a hands-on approach for discovery and for exploring real world just needs for, living, everyday living and jobs. And so he really loved this. And then he dove in headfirst, deep into the pool. And he was saying, man, STEM is everywhere. Look at the pizza he found in the cafeteria. And, that's a real interesting pentagon with a pie chart. It's like home plate. There you go. Just, all the different parts of math that's just in that one image. And it's finding those little things like that to help kids, to answer that question for kids when they say, I'm never going to use this. When am I going to learn to use this in real life? Well, there you go. There's real life math in everything. STEM is everything. And yes, he looks at the world through STEM colored glasses. And yes, he clicked on the slides, 150 of them just about that fast, right? But it was building a culture of STEM, of exploration, of problem solving for all students. Again, the crossover between special ed and general ed. It is, this is really, to me, something that I think most elementary teachers understand, and most special ed teachers understand, that every teacher is an art teacher, a history teacher, a literacy teacher, a STEM teacher. So you can incorporate and really double click on different things, no matter what your specialty area is. My husband was a secondary English teacher for 40 years. And he finally got it after a while. It's like, yeah, you're teaching reading, you're teaching grammar, you're teaching writing, but you're doing within the context of social studies. So he used to team up with the social studies teachers, and children would submit, they'd work for a semester on one research report, and they submitted it to him for writing and composition, and then they'd submit it to the social studies teacher for content. So they had instead of 45 minutes a day to collaborate and work on this, they had 90 minutes in the middle school. That's how they ran their periods. But this is what hits me when I see that. Chris really talked about how do you use STEM for practical problem solving in so many different ways. And these kids, in this particular article that he was highlighting, use some engineering tips to build an attachment to this man's wheelchair so he could be walking his baby and bringing him out to the park and being a person. Love it. It's just great. So he talks about how it's different for everybody. That just kind of echoes our mantra, one size doesn't fit all. And then he spoke with how you can talk with parents about it. And I think that really hits home as well. So it's not a class, it's a culture. And we live and breathe that here at Education Associates. Just so much good stuff from Chris Woods. You can follow him at Daily STEM on like most social media things. So you can go Google him. And here is that QR code again in regard to the August kickoff our back to school year in STEM for everybody. It was a lot of fun, and we were surprised. I think this was his second time that he's spoken with us for the past 5 years. We'll have him back again. He's pretty cool. So that was August, and in September, we were joined by one of our really highly regarded mentors and advisors. Dr. Amy Spriggs, who is from University of Kentucky, has worked with us for years. She has helped us with doing some of the field-based research and foundational research. She helped us understand what evidence-based practices were and how to incorporate them into each one of our lessons, how to incorporate differentiated learning into each of our lessons and so forth. She was speaking in September about higher leverage practices for special ed. And when we first discussed this and we were in planning mode, I've got my ed degree and my special ed degree, and I've taught. I said, "Ooh, how come I've never heard of higher leverage practices for special ed?" And when she dove into it, I said, "Oh, I do know what this is. It's just a new term, but it does have some really strong underpinnings that were developed by the Collaboration for Effective Educator Development, Accountability, and Reform, which is CEEDAR, CEDAR, and the Council for Exceptional Children, CEC. So they work together to put these high leverage practices, HLPs, for special ed and for teacher candidates together. So this is what she's teaching pre-service teachers from University of Kentucky. This is what she's teaching them how to look for and do. These pillars underneath collaboration, data-driven planning, instruction in behavior and academics, intensify and intervene as needed, right? Those 4 overarching goals that build the pillars for HLP. And then she unpacked it for us in a fun way. She's dealing with college-age students who are going to be our future teachers. So she's cool. She really comes on in. So this is like such an infographic all by itself. If I were you and you get the PDF that we send you, I'd print this out and have this on up in the teacher room, because it reminds you about scaffolding and how you can get on into it and why to do it, how to scaffold, where it fits in so many different ways and the types of doing it. So there was just a lot of detail within here that I wouldn't even try to give you in just the short time that we have today. But I invite you to come back for September to see that. And also maybe to take a look. This one is from HLP 16, using explicit instruction. And this is one of the models that we use when we do our professional development. I do it and you watch. We do it together. You do it and I watch, and you do it alone and I give you some input. So this just really simple model for that gradual release and helping students get on out there. That's one of the high leverage practice pillars, HLP 16. Here's another one near and dear to my heart because I'm a techie. This is about using assistive and instructional technology. So For those of you who are going to ATIA, and I think it's January 31 through February 2nd in Orlando. ATIA is an awesome conference, and they have all sorts of amazing AT devices and experts there. The keynote this year is going to be awesome. But I would definitely recommend, if you want to learn more about HLPs, what's nice is that she has given you also the resources that you need to go back on in and see that. And yes, we'll send this to you. And yes, you can find all of that stuff at bit.ly at /EAI _September 24 to WW. You know, repetition is one of those evidence-based practices. So I'm trying to practice that. Okay. We're into October, and Lynn Perry was a delight. Lynn Perry is from LaGrange College in Georgia, and she was talking about PBL, project-based learning. And yes, this totally double-clicked on the HLPs that Dr. Spriggs had covered in September, and even on the STEM Anywhere and Everywhere that Chris Woods had done. So she was talking about project-based learning. How many of you right now are using PBL in your school? Again, another crossover, because gen ed teachers use PBL like water. That's very common language to them. And it's a great way to team your kiddos up, especially if they're in an inclusion setting. It's a great way to really team up and make sure you're working with your gen ed colleagues and so forth. She talked about the definition and the importance and research of PBL. And then she really dove into these 4 areas, the evidence-based reasons why you can use PBL to engage students, and then to keep them engaged. So it was really a lot about that. She gave us the research behind it, and then some practical ways to get started, starting small, right? You don't have to, what's the saying? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? So start small and do something that's project-based, and then grow from there. Luckily, in our curriculum, we will walk you through project-based engagement. So she kind of dove into that and really talked about, so let me go back to that for a moment, talked about the importance of PBL to personalize instruction, ensure collaboration, hands-on learning, flexible assessments, critical thinking and problem skills, as well as supporting the learning environment. And this student here is working with our horticulture and growing kits. And then she showed another one here, which was from our shopping and working in a food service industry thing. So she really opened up, quite a bit and helped us understand that from comprehensive assessment, digital curriculum and student instructions, there's multiple difficulty levels embedded within our materials. And she was really sweet to go into that in great depth as well. So love this. Thanks so much to Lynn Perry in October. It really does show you can, in one box, kind of uncover things and use some things more for some students versus others. Really very, very enlightening overall. And then finally in November, we were absolutely wowed. I was. This is what it's all about, ladies and gentlemen. This presentation by Elizabeth Baird and Bridget Satarsky from the South Carolina School for the Deaf and Blind took project discovery and achieve life skills to the next level. And this is what gets us up in the morning. This is what has us working like umpteenth hours every day, every week, because of the way these ladies were able to really take it apart. And even if you don't work with deaf or blind students, you're going to want to look to see how they did accommodations for different students. So again, there's a QR code there, and the bit.ly /EAI _NOVE24 WW. This is one you need to see, because I can't show you all of the videos that they had in here, just within the amount of time that we have, but it's really very impressive. So they spoke about the differences in teaching deaf students versus blind students. And of course, so many of our students present with multiple disabilities, and you really have to incorporate that. And so they spoke with deaf students. Visual representations were so important. They love the fact that all of our materials have real photographs. So rather than little line drawings or stick figures, we have pictures of real boys, girls, men, women of all colors and races. We have them real photos with real objects. So if we're talking about a coffee cup, we've got a real coffee cup. We've got real flowers, real seeds, real hammers and nails and so forth. They use sign language, printed word, picture symbols, and real objects. So they loved being able to extend this on through. It was really eye-opening how they offered some practical suggestions, because like in our health and nutrition modules that we have within our Achieve Life Skills, we talk about a healthy diet. And just a little sidebar they were talking about is they had some students who equated the word diet with experiences they had of, let's say, a parent or other family member or friend who was on a diet to lose weight. And it was like completely mind-blowing for the students, was saying, oh, you mean diet is just what you eat? And you can have a vegetable-based diet or a plant-based diet or a meat diet, or, and I think it came up because if you see this picture here where she's showing when they're going over and brainstorming dairy parts of your diet, when she put ice cream up on the board, I think the student was saying, well, ice cream's not part of a diet. You can't lose weight if you're eating ice cream. And so it's like, oh, yeah, but that's not what the word diet means. So learning about vocabulary and the nuances of those vocabularies, especially for students who are deaf or blind, means like, or just learning disabled. I mean, like, just you really need to have direct instruction on something as simple as the word diet or the category that you're working on, and then help students really go into it and begin to do sorting and matching and being able to put together a healthy diet and so forth. So they did some really good matching of adaptations based upon students who have multiple modalities, that need multiple modalities in order to learn, and how to put things together. So in the images that you see right here, so the first boy had a choice board with a happy face or a sad face. And so he was choosing based upon his, those two choices. So he could answer questions in the assessment with that modified little device there, that assistive technology. Other students putting together pieces of the puzzle using the clicker button so they could answer the questions. Because our program has pre and post assessments, so you can check for mastery, as well as instructional models. So this was how they modified some of that to help, in this case, visually impaired students be able to magnify and improve it. They had, this was a video where the student, you can see he's got one screen that is enlarged text, and he's typing on that one. And the vocabulary was coming in on the side and on an iPad. So he had to enlarge the image on the iPad so that he could type it on in. And that was how she could check for knowledge and understanding using that assistive technology. That's what I mean by accommodations. It's just like use what you have in order to help that student learn what was going on. She has brailing devices. So if a student is learning brailing, they can use our curriculum, whether they're learning about diet or they're learning about veterinary care, or working, in a supermarket. They could practice their brailing skills to demonstrate knowledge on the content of the lesson. So if that makes sense, it was a wow. It was just a total wow. She really talked about students, or the two women talked about students who have certain careers in mind. Like some students say, well, I love cars. I want to work with cars. And that's great, but you've got to be able to also see whether or not you'd fit within that environment. And in some cases they didn't. And certainly some students who are on the spectrum. I've had one student who really had that same thing, love cars, shiny cars, Matchbox cars. That was what he really loved. But once he got into a real garage where mechanics were working, it was oily and dirty, and he had a sensitivity to those types of things. So he couldn't, there was a mismatch between the sensory sensitivity in the actual garage, the actual work environment. So you can like cars all you want, but if you can't, get your hands dirty with oil, it's not your job. So they really felt that having those transition goals that incorporate skills for the chosen career make it real, make it something that you have to follow through on. And they're working with 13 through 17 and 18 plus. We know a lot of our kiddos stick around till age 22. It teaches them lots of different things. I have to point out this one sentence here at the end. Students who are 18 plus, who are going through this curriculum, it teaches them not only the job skills and life skills, but it helps them learn things that they don't even realize they're capable of doing. The fact that students go, oh, yeah, I can do that is great. I also kind of want to double click on that because it shows parents what their students, what their children are capable of doing. I've had so many teachers, parents who've come to me and said, my child can't do that. We're setting a table, right? And we're having students follow through because they're going to be at a restaurant. Maybe they're a bus boy, a bus girl, or they're serving, they're setting up tables, and we're teaching them how to carry glasses to the table. My child can't do that. He's going to break glasses. And so, he might not do that at home, but he's doing it here just fine. Really? Yep. And he does a great job with it. He's, really acing it out. So just that whole realization, that's like a metacognition thing, realizing what you're capable of doing. So cool. So that was the November Webinar Wednesday. Once again, you've got a formula there for you can go and figure out what was in there. And very, very cool. Hope you got some taste of it. You can certainly share this broadcast here today with anybody that we're going to be sending you a recording, and we're going to be sending you the copy of the slides. If you've got any questions now, I'll be happy to answer anything for you. But each one of those are available on our website, and I'm going to show you how you can find them if you just want to, if you don't want to have to, you're in the middle of something and somebody says, oh, well, how can we teach students to work in a bank? So wait a moment. You're going to go to educationassociates.com. And right on our website, we've got resources, and you can get a preview packet for free. And I'll show you what that one kind of looks like. So the preview packet has in a nice little PDF document, real live examples of the natural audio that we use. We don't use a computer voice. We had voice actors. So it's real pictures, real voice. So you could see that. You could see some of the video modeling and some of the other pieces of video schedule or, virtual schedule, things like that. Find out what's in the kits. There's also our newsletter, and that is on the bottom of just about every page on our website. You scroll way down. Signing up for that newsletter will, oh dear, what's going on there? Isn't that fun? Do you see that going on?
Yeah.
I think my Chrome just decided to go away. It's gonna touch. I'm not going to touch anything because that was very weird. But let me tell you about the newsletter while it's coming back on up, because I think that's exactly what it's going to do. It's just going to come right back on up. And it may need me to do that slideshow button again. Okay. But what some of the special education administrators that I know have done is they sign up for this newsletter and they send it out to their teachers, to their paraprofessionals, to their staff, because in those newsletters, we kind of summarize what happens in our Webinar Wednesdays, or we summarize good news from different teachers around the country. So it's really not a sales thing. And this is a beautiful one that we had last, from one of the first webinars with Cheryl Hubbard, George from Florence, South Carolina. And so she was talking about how do you get into your community to work with community members. And so that was awesome. But that newsletter by itself is a great quick read that helps your staff keep learning. Every day we keep learning as we're going along. And then you can always contact us. There's lots of ways that we're happy to customize information for you. Remember, one size does not fit all. We can go to our resource page and you can discover a whole set of things in there. So here's what's on the resource page for you. Everything from the webinar Wednesdays, you can kind of see in the middle there, webinars and videos, and then all of the other resources. But on those webinar Wednesday pages, you can go on through and it will thumb through each of the webinars that we have. So that's where I'm really sending you to with all those QR codes. It sends you to each one of those. And finally, right next to the resources button, there was the find the funds. And that's where we have mapped out and aligned with all the right language you need to use, the alignment to major funding sources. So hopefully you've got some good information in there. And we thank all of the presenters that came and spent their time preparing, practicing, and delivering all of those webinars last year and for the past 5 years. And we're ready for 2025. We normally do this on the first Wednesday of every month because the first Wednesday of January is always still school vacation. We do second in January, but we'll be back here on that first Wednesday of February, and we're really looking forward to having you join us again. Lisa, any final words you want to share with everybody?
Nope. I think that 2025 will be just as spectacular as 2024. So we encourage all of you to come back and invite your friends and sign up for our Wednesday webinars because they are, as Joyce proved to us, very informative, and you just take away so much from these webinars. And we just want to encourage you to keep coming back and to sign up on that Facebook page, because that's where you're going to get reminders about Wednesday webinar. You're going to get reminders about the Gary Bates Award. We're going to have continuing contests, I think, as we go through 2025. And so that's where you can be in the know about all the things Education Associates. There's just a couple of questions you have to answer, and that's just to make sure you're in the right group. Because like Joyce said, it is a private group, so we don't want any kind of issue. So it's just a couple of questions, takes you 2 minutes and you're in. And then you get in on all of the first come, first serve kind of things. And I also too wanted to mention, we are in the process of converting more of our general kits into our adapted kits. We've got 3 of them that are all in the works and being processed. I don't want to give you a timeline because that timeline's very fluid and it keeps changing because we have outside people that are doing other things in addition to helping us, and we don't have control over that. But if you are on the private Facebook page, you will get first glimpses at those kits that are coming. So that's another reason why you should sign up right now. Like Joyce says, don't walk, run to get signed up for our Facebook page.
Yeah, you can get a free Chief Life Skills kit. It's worth signing up. And those 3 questions that you answer to get in are your security in knowing that some bot, right? Some scammer is not choosing into our group. It's a real live person, a real live educator who's free to come on in and just be part of the community. And learn from each other. So real PLC out of everything. And so hey, Felisa, thank you so much for having me here today again. And we'll see you the first Wednesday of February. We send you all warm vibes in Florida and everywhere else in the country. And we look forward to seeing you on the first Wednesday of January. Take care.
Have a good everybody.
Okay. Bye. All righty. So that's the first thing is stop the recording. Okay.